Bring in now the Minister for Superannuation and Financial Services, Senator Jane Hume. Minister, thanks very much for your time. Let's start off on the issue of the Integrity Commission. Labor committing to deliver one by Christmas if they're elected. The Prime Minister pledged to have one in place. That hasn't been achieved. Is that a broken promise?
Well, we did deliver to the Parliament over 300 pages of legislation on a very detailed plan for a Commonwealth Integrity Commission, a Commonwealth Integrity Commission that would uphold the rule of law, that would maintain the presumption of innocence, that wouldn't allow for show trials or a kangaroo court. What the Labor Party have put forward is simply 2 pages of fluff with no detail. In fact, I heard Jonathan Lee say just before, no meat on the bone whatsoever. So I think it now is up to Anthony Albanese to tell us exactly what the difference is between the model that he's putting forward and the model that he has rejected, that the government has put forward.
You said you put it to Parliament, but it actually wasn't put to a vote, was it?
It wasn't put to a vote, but the legislation is there for all to see, and it was very detailed legislation, and there was significant consultation on that legislation too. Now, there were some people that disagreed with it. However, from a government's perspective, it was a very robust piece of work and a lot of effort went into it, a lot of consultation went around it. Anthony Albanese's equivalent is 2 pages with no consultation around it, and it really is now up to Labor to say what it is that they intend to do with an Integrity Commission, what it is that they tend to make different from the legislation that they have already rejected that was brought forward by the Coalition, that legislation that was very detailed and very comprehensive.
But, you know, when there's an election commitment made, a pledge, a promise, isn't it incumbent upon the government to negotiate to get something through that hasn't been achieved? Therefore, I repeat that question, is it not a broken promise in that sense? The Prime Minister said there would be one, there isn't one, and we're going to the election without a Federal Integrity Commission.
A Commonwealth Integrity Commission is really important, and that's why we committed to it at the last election. But most importantly, it's important to get right. To get a Commonwealth Integrity Commission wrong would not only cost the taxpayers millions of wasted dollars, but it could also destroy lives, and that's not something that we intend to see. We don't want a show trial. This isn't being done for the media's appetite or for some sort of salacious gossip aspect. This is supposed to be an anti-corruption commission, corruption using the criminal definition of corruption, and that's exactly the legislation that we put forward. To get this wrong would be a disaster, and that's why we've maintained our commitment to delivering a Commonwealth Integrity Commission, a very detailed, a well-consulted upon piece of legislation, and now it's up to Labor to say what it is that they have a problem with and what their alternative would be, not simply presenting 2 pieces of paper with basic principles and no meat on the bone whatsoever.
Is this a threat to your colleagues in the seats being contested by the so-called teal independents? It's an issue they're running very strongly on, the fact the government hasn't delivered yet on it. Is this a vulnerability for your colleagues fighting off those independents?
Those so-called teal independents, the fake independents, are running on the issue of integrity, and yet at the same time these fake independents won't admit to belonging to the Labor Party in times past. They won't admit to the dodgy use of donations, splitting up donations. So I think that some of these teal independents have integrity issues of their own to answer. What I can say is that a Commonwealth Integrity Commission, while it's an important commitment and one that we made at the last election, is not an issue that's on top of most voters' minds. Most voters out there are more interested in the fact that the economy is strong. They want to know that they have a job to go to. They want to know that the cost of living pressures are being relieved. And that's exactly what we've delivered in this budget, with cuts to fuel excise, with tax offsets for low and medium income earners, and also with payments to those who can't otherwise deal with rising cost of living, pensioners, concession card holders, veterans. So that's what the coalition government is focused on, issues that are most important to voters, their futures, their lives, and what's important to them. And the health announcements today are just part of that. You know, without delivering a strong economy, we couldn't make the commitments to health that we have. And today, I think, as I heard Trudy mention, there is a $273 million announcement for people who have type 1 diabetes, that they will now have continuous glucose monitoring. Without that commitment, they would spend around $5,000 a year on continuous glucose monitoring. So this will be great news for the 71,000 Australians that can now access that treatment that wouldn't be able to before. You couldn't put those sorts of investments in health. You couldn't make those sorts of investments in the PBS without a strong economy. That's what we're focused on.
The other health announcement today, Anne Ruston to become the health minister. If you win the upcoming election, Senator Hume, and you're one of the favourites to enter cabinet, have you had any indications that that's in line?
Well, first let me say that the official announcement of Anne Ruston's appointment will be made, well, hopefully, by the Prime Minister today. I don't want to preempt it, and I am so pleased for her. She is a highly qualified and highly experienced member of our cabinet. She's dealt with the portfolio and social services as a very successful minister there, dealing with what's important to millions of people's lives. So I think she will be a terrific appointment to the health portfolio, which is so important at a time like this, where we're still in the midst of a global pandemic. It's really important to know that there are steady hands at the wheel of such an important portfolio.
And any indications to you that you might be getting a promotion too if you win?
Thank you very much, Kieran. That's very flattering indeed. I'm a Treasury Minister and very proud to be one, and there is an awful lot still of work to do still in my portfolio, and I serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister.
Now, the dramas for the Liberals continue. Like you've said, there's an argument to be made on the economy and on the health front, but still the internal divide causing headaches for the government, for the Prime Minister. You've got the New South Wales Treasurer, Matt Kean, calling for the Liberal candidate in Warringah to be disendorsed because of her comments in relation to trans kids. What's your read on this? Is the candidate going to be disendorsed, given it's a distraction?
Catherine Deese has very strongly held opinions on an issue that's important to lots of Australians, and that's fairness and equality in women's sports. The language she used was inappropriate. She said it was inappropriate, and she has withdrawn those comments. And I think that is entirely the right decision to make. Look, she's not the only candidate to have had history on social media. We know that the Labor candidate for Hunter has also made some highly offensive comments on social media. He too has withdrawn those comments, and there is no call for him to be disendorsed. So I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander here. Catherine Deves is going to be an excellent candidate for Warringah.
Your colleague Dave Sharma seemed to endorse the view of Matt Kean in calling for her to be disendorsed. Obviously, it's a very sensitive issue in his electorate of Wentworth. Do you see the ramifications that could be felt by some of your colleagues here?
I think that Catherine Deves has done the right thing. She's done the right thing by withdrawing those remarks, by admitting that that was inappropriate language that could be offensive to some people. She is a very passionate woman. She is very committed to ensuring that women and girls can compete in sport on an equal and fair basis. And I think that that's something that a lot of Australians would agree with. The comments that she made on social media have gone, they have been withdrawn. She agrees that they were wrong, but her commitment to the cause remains, and I think that that is admirable.
On a few other matters, the Prime Minister appears to be setting up another battle on industrial relations before this vote on May 21. But can people take it seriously, given, again, the government put forward reforms, they were knocked back in the Parliament and they weren't achieved? Is it just hot air here?
Well, there was an awful lot of consultation that went into those reforms around improving the awards system, about making sure that wage theft was outlawed, and about making sure that enterprise bargaining was made simpler and fairer. Anthony Albanese and Labor have now come forward with their industrial relations policies that would potentially cost employers billions of dollars with portable entitlement schemes. The MBA, the Master Builders Association, the Business Council of Australia, and indeed the IAG Group have also come out and said that they've sounded the alarm to say that Anthony Albanese's industrial relations reforms are not reforms at all. They are simply costs to business. They would push up the price of houses, of construction. They would increase the cost of employing new people. They are essentially another tax on employment. So I think that the questions need to be asked now about the industrial relations reforms, so-called reforms, that Labor are putting forward. Our reforms, our industrial relations reforms are clear. They have been for a long period of time, and they're important reforms to be made. But they wouldn't be a cost to business. They wouldn't be a cost to employers, and they wouldn't be a cost to people that are buying houses. The
Labor Party says it's simply going to consult on that it's not locked into any portability of entitlements at this point. But let's wrap up, if we can, on this debate. Coming up on Wednesday, the first debate of the campaign, the Sky News Courier Mail People's Forum. A crucial moment for both leaders, for the Prime Minister to maintain this momentum he's got with a victory in this first debate, if he can achieve that, Jane Hume.
Well, debates are always a test, but I think this is where Scott Morrison as Prime Minister has always performed well. In the past, he has a fantastic legacy to put forward, a history that's saved the economy, that's saved thousands of jobs throughout a period of time where we've had a global pandemic, bushfires, floods, a war in Europe, changing geopolitical landscape, and yet the economy is now stronger than it has ever been. That we have a growth trajectory that is something that is the envy of the OECD nations, the developed world. We have unemployment that's lower than it's been in nearly 50 years, and we have maintained a AAA credit rating. One of only 9 countries to do so. But most importantly, we have a plan for a stronger economy and a stronger future. So there's an awful lot to talk about. I'm sure Scott Morrison will perform brilliantly on Wednesday night.
Minister for Superannuation and Financial Services, Jane Hume, happy Easter, and thanks for making the time today.
You too. Thanks, Kieran.